Hello, this is Eastern Europe Review, a joint production of BELSAT and TVP World with reports and analysis from Ukraine, Belarus and Russia. I'm Alexandra Shapalina and these are the main stories.
Let me open fire on the plantation.
The exclusive footage of the Ukrainian brigade holding defenses in the direction of Marinka, the hottest spot at the front line.
We captured a serviceman who comes from Nepal. He's not the only foreigner in the unit that stormed our brigade unit. He also told us that mercenaries from Egypt and other countries are serving in the Russian army.
Dictator Lukashenka continues to boast about fighting imaginary extremists and terrorists at the meeting of the security and intelligence services of the CIS.
He always has enemies. If the economy is in trouble, Uncle Sam from America is to blame. Or there is another cause, but it must be external.
Undermining historical memory, Russian authorities eradicate the signs of the Last Address project.
Authorities are dismantling plaques, claiming they are illegal advertising constructions. Of course, this makes no sense at all. The Last Address plaques are not advertising structures.
Intense clashes are underway for control of Marinka. Russian media asserts that the town has fallen to Russian troops, a claim denied by Ukrainian authorities. Our colleagues managed to capture footage from the command post of the Ukrainian brigade, which is holding the defense line in the direction of Marinka and Avdiivka.
Borisich, switch it to full screen. Yes, here we go. There, he is already dead, destroyed.
This footage captures the operations of the Ukrainian army's attack drones. Drone operators of the 59th Separate Motorized Infantry Brigade of the AFU are launching a grenade into the trenches of the Russian infantry, which is about to storm the positions of Ukrainian fighters.
Turn the camera to the student.
And this is footage of an unsuccessful Russian assault on Ukrainian positions. 2 infantrymen of the Russian army are dragging their wounded colleague into their trenches. The command is watching the battle live from the control center. It is a heavily fortified place, equipped with light, internet, and various means of communication. From this strategic point, Ukrainian infantrymen are coordinating and controlling the battle around the clock, defending positions in the direction of Marinka, Avdiivka, Pisky, and other settlements.
Let me open fire on the plantation.
Maxim, with a call sign Contour, serves as the commander of one of the battalions. He reports that the Russian army has been persistently attempting to storm the trenches held by his soldiers for the past 3 months in the direction of Donetsk.
There are always groups of 4 or 6 soldiers, but they are constantly building up. One group goes, followed by another, regardless of the weather.
According to Maxim, foreign mercenaries are also fighting for the Russian army in this direction. The Russian command primarily deploys them for assaults and combat reconnaissance.
We captured a serviceman who comes from Nepal. He's not the only foreigner in the unit that stormed our brigade unit. He also told us that mercenaries from Egypt and other countries are serving in the Russian army.
The Institute for the Study of War notes that the Russian army has an advantage in drones and manpower in this direction, but they are unable to break through the Ukrainian defense. There are only minor advances with losses in the direction of Marinka, Avdiivka, and Bakhmut. The deputy commander, with a call sign Pashtet, states that one of the main tasks is to prevent small arms fights between the warring sides to avoid losing fighters.
Often we don't even allow the enemy to approach the infantry because small arms combat is a grueling thing.
The top priority for the Ukrainian command is to preserve personnel, to sustain the defense along previously occupied lines. Ukrainian commanders highlight an uneven balance of forces.
Belarusian dictator Lukashenka persists in combating alleged extremists and terrorists. During the meeting of the Security and Intelligence Services of the Commonwealth of Independent States in Belarus, Lukashenko reported on the apprehension of 20 extremist cells and urged Zelensky to engage in negotiations with Putin. However, the dictator's rhetoric intended to rally CIS countries around Russia lacked conviction for all the meeting participants except Russia.
Alexander Lukashenko continues his attempts to gather the Commonwealth of Independent States countries around Russia and himself. This time he promoted his rhetoric at a meeting of the Security and Intelligence Services of the CIS members.
It's symbolic that at a time of wars and political cataclysms, the current meeting is taking place here in Belarus. Despite political pressure and sanctions from the West and above all the USA, as you well know, we continue to develop a peaceful and stable state.
This narrative is now indispensable to his speeches. The world is in chaos, and only Belarus is an island of stability that the West and NATO are trying to shake. According to the dictator, in such conditions, the CIS should unite and develop its economic potential, and intelligence officers should not lose their connections.
He always has enemies. If the economy is in trouble, Uncle Sam from America is to blame, or there is another cause, but it must be external. It's obvious that losing the 2020 elections and the repressions are all machinations of external enemies, so that the policy he has been pursuing has its justification.
According to Lukashenko, the activity of foreign special services in Belarus is becoming increasingly aggressive. Belarusian special services, in collaboration with Russian counterparts, have allegedly detained about 20 groups of terrorists who are preparing for operations on the territory of Belarus and Russia.
They aren't just sending spies to us, but terrorist agents. They're trying to create extremist cells, form regiments from our fugitives, and attract mercenaries. I'm not exaggerating. On the contrary, I can't say everything.
The Lukashenko regime doesn't tolerate all Belarusian paramilitary formations abroad. The head of KGB, Ivan Tertzel, expressed his opinion about the Pospolitaye Rushenne, Belarusian paramilitary movement in the European Union, where Belarusians engage in military and physical training. According to him, it's being prepared for the seizure of objects in Belarus.
No actions to seize administrative buildings and no terrorist attacks have ever been planned by the Pospolitaye Rushenne. We don't have the same methods as Lukashenko's so-called special services, which are aimed at the destruction of everything Belarusian.
Lukashenko and his associates are good at using Pharisaic language. Regarding Russia's war against Ukraine, the dictator justified the full-scale invasion of the Russian army by blaming Zelensky's policy. He urged him to sit down at the negotiating table with Putin.
I told Volodymyr Zelensky at the beginning of the war, inviting him to Belarus for negotiations. There were 3 rounds here. I told him, the war is on your land. He shouted at me that they had been attacked. Russians are this and that. I told him, why did you provoke them?
During Lukashenko's speeches, Ukraine continues to fortify its defense line along the border with Belarus by digging anti-tank ditches, installing dragon's teeth and barbed wire, and mining the territory.
The longer a defense line is, the fewer soldiers are needed to be kept there. For example, 100 people will be able to hold the defense, whereas before, 500 were needed. I think this is done to free up personnel to send them somewhere else, because this front needs a lot of people.
Ukrainians will be able to transfer their troops from Polessia to the front, and Lukashenko will continue to broadcast his theories to the CIS states. However, it is unlikely that he can strengthen the Commonwealth with his unconvincing rhetoric.
Russian authorities are removing memorial plaques from houses installed by activists. The plaques commemorate residents repressed during the Stalinist terror. Activists from the Last Address project assert that these actions have political overtones. Vladimir Putin, who openly admires the reign of Joseph Stalin, appears unwilling to acknowledge evidence of the Soviet dictator's crimes.
The Russian authorities have initiated a campaign against memorial plaques. These plaques were installed on the walls of houses to commemorate those who had been repressed during the wave of Stalinist terror of 1937. According to activists from the Last Address project, over 100 memorial plaques have already been dismantled, with dozens of them located in St. Petersburg.
Там на той стороне табличек.
On the other side of those plaques, there are tragic fates and gaps in history that we are trying to restore somehow and bring to light. Current times have created a situation where our plaques also have complicated and dramatic fates.
The activists claim that in Russia's northern capital, the removal of plaques is linked to denunciations by a single person, presumably named Alexander. He submits complaints to officials through the city website, stating in his letters that the installation of the plaques was approved by a historical and educational society called Memorial. It's worth noting that Memorial was recognized as a foreign agent and subsequently dissolved in Russia. That is why the activist believes that the memorial plaques should also be dismantled.
Authorities are dismantling plaques, claiming they are illegal advertising constructions. Of course, this makes no sense at all. The Last Address plaques are not advertising structures. We have responses from various committees on this matter. The press committee, in particular, approves advertising structures. The committee itself has put it in writing that our plaques are not advertising.
The Last Address is a project initiated in 2014 as a civic initiative to immortalize the memory of people who fell victim to political repression during the Soviet regime. It involves affixing a plaque to the wall of the house where each repressed person lived. The project follows the principle of one name, one life, one sign. The active dismantling of these plaques has begun after the invasion in Ukraine, as the Russian authorities intensified their pursuit of so-called internal enemies. Journalist Sergei Parkhomenko, one of the creators and coordinators of the Last Address project, asserts that this aligns seamlessly with the logic of the actions of the Putin regime.
For many years, the state has constructed its concept around the ideas of isolationism, that we are surrounded by enemies, that we are a besieged fortress, and that everyone hates us. And this is being done to serve one purpose: to maintain the grip on power of the ruling elite.
Some plaques are being defaced by vandals with stickers depicting Stalin. However, at the same time, public support for the project is growing. Unknown people are taking the initiative by placing homemade cardboard copies in place of the removed plaques.
We are not involved in this. We are simply observing how others are actively supporting the project. This is very inspiring, of course. It gives us strength and a feeling that the project is still needed. There are still people who care about it despite hard times.
The initiative was adopted by civil activists beyond Russia's borders. Ukraine led the way, followed by the placement of memorial plaques on the facades of houses in Prague. The Last Address plaques have also been installed in Moldova, Georgia, and Germany. No one is going to undermine historical memory in these countries.
That's all for today. Thank you for watching Eastern Europe Review. We will be back next week with the news stories. I'm Alexandra Shapalina. Keep watching TVP World and see you next time.